Hey everyone, it's good to see you here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I decided, plain and simple, I just got to talk college football. That's all there is to it. Just got to talk college football on a Thursday night, Friday morning at midnight. Welcome in. We got 5 on the line. Hope to see many more join us. My apologies for the late notification. They came out about 3 hours ago, so I gave you about a 3 hours heads up. And this is not one of our regularly scheduled live streams or call-in shows, but just wanted to talk college football with you. And again, just couldn't stay away. Just had to talk college football with you. I've said this many times recently. This is what I love to do more than anything else, is take your comments, your questions, your suggestions, your recommendations, everything that you've got for me in the live chat, and then also to take your calls. And the number is 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687 here at the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers TV. We've got a number of content selections that are coming your way that we're extremely excited about. Just in the last few days, we've released our top 5 Pac-12 quarterbacks and running backs, and also our coaches' rankings in the Pac-12. Tomorrow, I will be shooting my top 5 in the SEC at quarterback and running back, and also my SEC coaches rankings. I believe that's going to provide a lot to discuss and debate. Let's take our first call of the night. I will remind you that the super chat is on as well. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Kevin.
Who is it again?
Hey, it's Kevin.
Kevin, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Mark. Doing good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first time you've called.
No, I've called in like once or twice before. This may be my third time talking.
I apologize. How you doing tonight?
No, I'm great. Hey, I'm great. I'm up. Tomorrow's Friday, so I thought I'd stay up a little late tonight. And I'm so glad I caught your show, man.
Yeah. So what's on your mind?
So I want to talk a little and get your thoughts on this, because I'm getting some conflicting information in regards to the Pac-12. And I don't know if you talked about it at length already this week, but what I've heard is that I don't know. I'm sorry. Where do you live? Just could you give me the state?
I live in Connecticut.
In Connecticut. Okay. All right. So this may be the same for like most states, but what I heard was that California state schools will be shut down and not allowed to play sports.
Yep.
For the most part. Now in North Carolina, which is where I'm from, you have like North Carolina state schools. So that includes like the University of North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, Wilmington, Western Carolina, Greensboro. All those belong into the state, public state program. Whereas Duke, who is just a few miles down the road from Chapel Hill in North Carolina, they're private. So when I hear California state schools, is that public? Is that include private? Because that's what I'm trying to figure out in terms of what they're planning on to do with the college football season in the Pac-12.
So you're speaking to a non-expert when it comes to legalities and when you talk politics. So understand that I'm watching the news just like everybody else. I probably am somewhere in the middle when it comes to how much news do I take in. Well, I'm not ignorant to it. I take in the news. I probably just watched a good 3 to 4 hours of news while I was working on the business here. So I do watch and pay attention and try to take in as much as possible. And I'm a thinking person, but at the same time, I'm not a big, huge news hound. So this is what I know at this point. And it's interesting, Kevin, that you brought this up, because I just looked at an article in which Cal head coach Justin Wilcox was quoted as saying that he and his coaching staff are looking into measures to take his team off campus, out of state, to practice, because the students won't be on campus, so they're going to be all offline. So I'm guessing that at least half of his team is probably from California, so they're going to have to be taken out of state, but that they're looking at that. So it's interesting also from the angle, as you asked that I thought, okay, well, the state obviously has more jurisdiction over public universities. When you look at the landscape of college football with a Power Five and also extending out to the Group of Five, every conference has a mix of public and private schools. At the same time, though, the state has been able to take the authority to shut down private business. So those are it's not like the state has mandated that all government offices, city hall, the post office, those would shut down, but they had no jurisdiction over private business. They've been able to shut down private business. So why would they not be able to mandate that students can't come on campus for private universities? I would think that they would be able to do that. And we know that California is going to continue its lockdown now for another 3 months. So it's an interesting question. I don't have the answers for you, but I've got that perspective so far.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's some clarification that I've been just trying to get, because I've heard some sources say all of California schools, like all schools are shut down. That includes Stanford, Cal, UCLA, USC, San Diego State. But then I've heard some sources, like on the Rich Eisen show and another podcast, say that it's only the public schools. So that's where a lot of misinformation is getting out right now in the media, in the main sports media, is it's just that kind of clear, because that does make a difference. That clarification makes a huge difference, because if you're talking about just the public schools be shut down, as far as sports goes and everything, then the Pac-12 could technically still function. I mean, private schools like Stanford and I believe Cal is a private school. I'm not sure Berkeley. I think that's a private school. They could stay in the Pac-12. They could continue, whereas only UCLA and USC public would stay closed. I mean, the Pac-12 could still function without those two schools. It's not ideal, but if you're just talking about all the schools in California not playing sports or being dramatically delayed, then the Pac-12 is going to have to reevaluate. And Mark, I wanted to ask you this too. This is probably another complicated question, but I'm also trying to figure out this whole chain of command and who makes the ultimate decision. And what I found is that the NCAA is sort of like, you watch The Office, Mark?
Oh, I love The Office.
You like that show?
Yes.
All right, yeah. So I'm sure a lot of guys in the chat and listening, they watch The Office. There's an episode where Gabe threatens to send home Jam and Pam for doing something without pay. He really doesn't have that authority, but he does it anyways. And when they figure it out, they go home and they're still getting paid. But he just tried to come off like he was the tough guy, like the middle manager, and that he has authority. And it seems what's kind of going on with the NCAA right now. The NCAA is kind of coming out with these statements like, we won't do, we're not going to do this and we're not going to do that. We're not going to delay the whole season for everybody. And they're coming out and making these statements like they're in charge, but it really seems like the conferences are the one in charge. And I referenced back to March Madness when it wasn't the NCAA that shut down all the conference championships before March Madness. It was the conferences themselves that said, okay, we're not going to do the championships, and literally stopped mid-game. That wasn't coming from the NCAA. That was coming from the individual conferences. So I'm wondering here is, even if the NCAA doesn't want to go forward with the college football season, or they want to postpone the majority of it until October or whatever, November, then maybe the conferences say, no, screw that. No, we're going to play. We're in the ACC. We're the SEC. We're going to play football. And I even heard reports that Alabama's already reaching out to TCU to schedule them in replace of USC for week 1. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Well, my thoughts are going to be similar to your thoughts in that, so I've made the same statement that you just made a number of times in the last several weeks, that unlike the federal government, for example, that if we go back to our history and government classes and civil classes going through our education, we know the checks and balances from the three branches and how government works. But with this, it's interesting to see who is going to take the lead, who is going to take over, where is the power structure? Because as you indicate, I'm just going through, based on what I have witnessed throughout the years, that the conferences, when they really want to take charge, the conference commissioners, they have ultimate control of college football. And from a money standpoint, we know that the five in the Power Five really control 98%, probably more than that. I know that that's an astonishing figure, but based on the TV contracts, they control college football. Exactly. So I can't imagine that if the NCAA said, hey, yeah, we're not playing college football, or we're doing this or doing that, and especially the SEC and the Big Ten in particular, and I hate to separate those two, but there is a distinction in regards to the amount that they control with money and TV ratings and so forth. But certainly the other conferences are extremely powerful as well. That, yes, those conference commissioners, if they got together and said, we want to play a season, this is how we're going to do it, and we need to scale back in these ways, A, B, and C. We're only going to play, let's say, conference games, and then we'll figure out what four go to the playoff. That could certainly be done without the NCAA. This may be another step in some things, other things that have happened down through the years to show that the NCAA could be, I'm not saying it's a weak organization, but it could be determined to be weak. It's not necessarily needed. But I don't know who's going to make that ultimate call. The only difference, and I made the same analogy about the conference basketball tournaments, that they all acted in amongst themselves. They all acted to themselves and made that call because, as you just alluded to, I remember the Big Ten stepping out at some point. They had only played one or two games on a Wednesday, I think, and said, we're done, we're shutting it down. The ACC was still in the process of playing and actually didn't decide until 10 or 15 minutes before tip-off on Thursday, hey, we're going to shut it down, we're not playing. So they all acted autonomously, in an autonomous fashion, I should say. The Big East actually started playing the next game, so there was no connection there. The only difference there is that those were conference tournaments, and they could be held and function unto themselves. There was no connection there. The Big Ten, if they wanted to play a tournament and say, we're going to crown a champion, even though there's not going to be an NCAA tournament, we want to do that, nobody was going to stop the Big Ten from doing that unless the government stepped in at that point. So they could all act in that situation. Conference tournaments are kind of unlike anything else. But to have cooperation to play a full college football season, there needs to be just that. There needs to be cooperation among the conferences. And to play a full college football season, extending to the group of five, the other five conferences, and even the FCS, if they're going to play the entire schedule, which obviously isn't crucial. So I know I didn't answer your question because your question doesn't have an answer. Your question doesn't have an answer. That's what's going to be fascinating about this playing out, because Kevin, please call back if you find somewhere on the internet or some source that tells us who has ultimate authority, because I cannot find that. I don't hear anybody letting us know what that is, but I believe that the conferences could take that authority if they so choose. They have that much power.
I agree. I think the conferences, like you said, they have total autonomy, and I think if all it would take for to reschedule Alabama USC would be Alabama contacting someone from the Big Ten and saying, hey, like can we get TCU on the schedule now? So, and then the conferences work amongst each other. I'm just baffled on what's gonna happen if the NCAA does come out, postpone all games until October, which I think they said they're not going to do. They said that's not what they're looking at right now. But even if they were to say that, if the conferences could just move on as scheduled anyways without the Pac-12, and that's what's kind of interesting, because I've heard people say, well, you know what, maybe the Pac-12 should divide up its remaining schools. If all of California shut down, divide up the schools, or send Oregon to the Big 12, send Utah to the Big 10, send Arizona State to the SEC, and then work Pac-12 and SEC work out some kind of contract to where those games played, they would get a small portion of the revenue generated. So working out something like that would be really, really fun and interesting for this year. I mean, 2020 has been crazy already. It'd be pretty cool to see Oregon in the SEC or something like that.
If
But
they can,
I don't
Kevin, if they can pull that off, then they can certainly pull off what I've been clamoring for years, and that's to not be scheduling games 13 years in advance, that there should be a schedule that's built a la the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL. If they can all do it, especially baseball with 162 games and 30 teams, there could be a schedule built in the off season and then announced, let's say on May 1st, that we all can enjoy. And this is ridiculous where games have to be scheduled 12 years in advance, and the schools clamor that, for travel plans and so forth, that they need to schedule that far out. But the conference games can be scheduled during the off season. If they can pull that off and make all the spots make sense and plug different teams from, let's say, the Pac-12 into the other conferences, that would be fun and fascinating. And I normally wouldn't be for that. But like you said, 2020, no, this is just a different deal. That would be fascinating if they could make that happen. Or we could just see kind of a hodgepodge where, let's not get too uptight that a few teams in the Big Ten have to play 11 games instead of 12 games because they can't connect with an FCS or somebody else in the Pac-12 or whatever the case is, and that there are just 10 and 11 and 12 game schedules depending on the team. But as long as the conferences can and there should be no reason that they can't maintain their own conference schedule unless there are situations like a Rutgers, who's in the epicenter of this pandemic, of course, that they just have to be completely pulled out of that area to play their Big Ten games, maybe a complete road schedule or neutral site schedule or something.
Oh, but can you imagine when the college football playoff rolls around and you're looking at undefeated, Wisconsin or Ohio State with one less game played than other undefeated or one lost teams from the SEC or something like that. Like, that conversation is going to get interesting, and people are going to look back to this moment when they tried to figure out the whole schedule thing and be like, did they do it correctly? How do we not plan for this?
In my mind, we're already comparing apples and oranges sometimes with this college football playoff committee. So this would just be another wrinkle.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one last question, and I'll get off so you can talk to some more people. I know they're waiting. So do you think this whole situation, the way it's looking, the first thing I thought of was you, because I know you're a big proponent of conference realignment. Do you think that this gives more credit to that the conferences should be more regional and somewhat closer? I mean, you got, it's a little crazy to think that the ACC has Syracuse, and Notre Dame, who are just absolutely away from the majority of the other ACC school teams in the South. The SEC has Texas A&M all the way out west of Texas A&M. So, I mean, do you think this gives more credit to the urge to conference realignment based on region, in case anything like this happens in the future? Then there could be a plan in place to where we say, okay, if California, we'll say if the East Coast is really struggling with a pandemic of some kind, then we know that the schools in this area, which is majority, whatever, SEC territory, ACC territory, Big 12, that conference is most likely not going to play. Rather, you're the ACC, and Syracuse is up there up north, and they're really struggling with this pandemic. Now the ACC has a decision to make. Like, what? Do we just take Syracuse off the schedule for our entire conference? So I don't know. Do you think it helps that case at all?
Well, I don't think we're going to go backwards. I think the genie's out of the bottle. I don't think, even though college football, much of the flavor and attraction to college football is regionalization, and that there's a reason why Alabama and Auburn work as rivals, and Ohio State, Michigan, and Oklahoma, Texas, that there's a regional feel to it, and that Boston and Miami should not be in the same conference, nor Nebraska and Rutgers. What do those two schools have? Nebraska and New York City. Oh, my goodness. You can't go, bipolar anymore on opposite ends of the spectrum than those two. I don't think this one-time event, hopefully one-time in our lifetime event, is going to push towards that. And for as much as I love to play with the conferences, and I think that they could be measured differently in regards to football, being taken into consideration above everything else, and money and other sports and so forth, and academics even. And academics is why they're there. I'm not discounting that. I want to be clear about that. I'm playing in fantasy land when I play with the conferences and say, forget about academics. I would actually love to turn back the clock and get back to where the student athlete is more student than athlete. But anyway, I don't have as much issue with the conferences and the alignment of the conferences as I actually do with the scheduling. That's where I have an issue more than anything. It's with the scheduling.
I agree there. Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Right on. Hey, well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me home.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Have a good night.
All right, brother. God bless.
God bless you. Can always take a God bless. Definitely. If you want to end the conversation with a God bless, I will take that every time. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You see the call-in number right there at 860-325-3687. Certainly, Kevin challenging me with a number of questions outside the realm of playing college football. And I got to tell you, in these circumstances in which college football or sports go past the playing lines into medical issues, political issues, and such, then, hey, we can all just go from the experiences that we've had in the past and trying to figure out what could possibly happen, and whatever our news sources are out there, and trying to predict what could possibly happen. But this goes way beyond the realm of just college football on the field, that's for sure. But that's what we want to get to, hopefully the first week of September. That's actually a countdown clock that takes us to the August 29th week 0 games in 106 days. So forward that up 7 days to 113. And I'm almost certain, unless there's a Thursday thrown in there, 113 is the countdown to week 1 and those college football games in week 1. 860-325-3687. The super chat's on. You can also contribute to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, directly to Venmo and PayPal. You can find me on Twitter, also Facebook and Instagram. If you follow me on Twitter, here's the deal. I'm not going to follow you back. Stop right there. I'm not a snob. I'm not going to follow you back because basically these are the people I follow on Twitter. Personal friends, and then somebody that can supply some type of information, college football information. If it's a media person or somebody like that. I also have the rule that I don't follow anybody that doesn't follow me. So I'm not out there following a bunch of celebrities and college football analysts, because if they're not going to follow me, I'm not going to follow them. But if you truly want me to follow you and you follow me on Twitter, just hit me up with a little note on Twitter and just nudge me and say, hey, Mark, you said you'd follow me. I'll follow you. If you really want me to follow you, I will follow you if you follow me. But otherwise, I'm not going to follow you just because if you're not providing, I just don't want to clog up my feed with, not that you're spewing out garbage, but I'm clearing out my feed just to follow people that are going to give me some type of information, insight, entertainment regarding college football. But what I'm trying to get to with the Twitter is that if you follow me on Twitter, what I've been doing over the last several months is I've been releasing college football polls on Twitter. And what I need from you is that if you've got Twitter polls that you would like to suggest and recommend, if you follow me on Twitter, I will automatically get your Twitter poll to my Twitter feed, and we'll release that as a Voice of College Football Twitter poll. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's George, Mark.
Hey, George. How are things up in Oregon?
Politically, economically, socially, how do you mean? Weather-wise, what?
Whatever matters to you. I do hear that the political scene is a bit rough because things are clamped down there in Oregon.
Well, Mark, I'm just going to be honest with you.
Oh boy.
I don't know anybody personally that has quarantined themselves. I don't know anybody in Oregon that has ever done anything different one day in their life since this all started. Everybody does what they want to do. But when you go to the store, you might have to stand in line behind 30 people for an hour and a half to get in the store. Blah, blah, blah. You know?
You don't see anybody doing anything different. Nobody's wearing a mask. Nobody.
No, people are wearing masks, and
Okay.
that's I understand that. I too have felt the peer pressure enough to put one on once. Well, when it said you can't go in the store without it. Oh my God, Mark, come on. We're older guys, you and me, right? We can certainly understand why it would be a bad idea to rebreathe your own freaking breath all day, every day, and stay in your house, right? Because you might just fucking die of lack of sunlight and exercise. I mean, is that the opposite of good health or what? Wear a mask. And how about gloves with all those toxic chemicals? Do you know that all the hand sanitizers have fungicides and pesticide residues in them? If you buy the modern brands, the Purell and all that bullshit. And you can tell them I said so because we have the scientific test and somebody took it to a lab. You know, so it's all ridiculous. I haven't washed my hands one time more than I normally would have anyway. I never bought often in it for a second. It's a psychological operation. Everybody knows what's going down deep in their soul, even if they can't articulate it. So that's why I called you. I want to ask you a question. Do you think there's any chance, if we have a football season and all things just go normally with no bizarre stuff happening, do you think Georgia can beat Alabama next year?
I thought I was going to get some kind of question about what football was going to look like, fans in the stands or some type of something connected to the virus. Boy, and then you just steered right into an actual football question. Okay.
No, that's what I called it. That's what I called about. Do you think, like, if we had a football season, let's say, I think it's going to happen, Mark. I think we're going to have a football season.
I believe so too.
Yeah. So do you think when Georgia gets rounded up and goes down there to play Alabama, do you think there's, what is it, 70-30, 80-20? How much of a chance does Georgia have to win this game with Jamie Newman versus Nick Saban?
George, you're starting to talk like me, giving odds like that, because I don't like to sit here in May and say Alabama's beating Georgia and make a prediction on it. But I will look at percentages and say Alabama's at home against Georgia. Alabama's a better football team. They've certainly performed better in recent years. Jamie Newman's a new quarterback, a very exciting quarterback. And listen up, I'm going to have my top 5 quarterbacks released in the SEC in just in the next few days. But that's going to be week 2 or week 3. I don't recall which one. Week 3. So I would think that would be to maybe Alabama's slight advantage because we didn't have spring football. We didn't have individual workouts with Jamie Newman at Georgia. New offense, new quarterback, still breaking him in. I can't recall off the top of my head if Georgia's going to have a difficult game before that. But, yeah. Can Georgia beat Alabama? Absolutely. They can beat them. If they played tomorrow, if they were prepared to play, I'd be pretty confident that Alabama's going to win that game.
Right. And it's because of the Georgia psyche. I mean, they have like as many 5-star players as anybody in the country, sure pretty do. Much. It's just more. A psyche thing. Huh?
I've got to be proven that Kirby Smart is going to make smart decisions and better decisions than Nick Saban. And that's not been proven in the 2 colossal matchups that they've had in championship games.
Hey, here's a neat trick that not many people can do. I can tell you ahead of time, years ahead of time or months, what Nick Saban is going to say to his team right before they run out the tunnel. He's going to tell them South Carolina beat them last year at home in front of 92,000 fans. I know you guys ain't going to let that happen here on our home field. And they're like, it's the ultimate smackdown.
You're touching on an interesting thing. You're touching on something, George. Nick Saban is good, maybe the greatest of all time. That's where I rank him, greatest of all time. I think it's a great conversation. But anyway, for a number of reasons, but the team ultimately mirrors the head coach. And that Alabama team, no, they don't win every game, and it's not like they didn't go out and get embarrassed by Clemson a couple of years ago. But my goodness, you talk about consistent greatness over 13 years, and that's based on him knowing exactly what his process should be. He doesn't leave any stone unturned. He is locked in on what needs to be done. He's got a system. He's got a process. He is poised. He is unwavering, and his teams play just like he do. He approaches the game in regards to poise, execution, mentally tough, physically tough, locked in. Georgia, it's hit or miss.
It's too easy for me to make jokes about Georgia, but I will give Georgia one thing. They do have the staff, and they do have the recruits, and they have the funding. They have it all, right? And they should have won the national title a couple years ago. LSU doesn't waste those chances. Auburn doesn't waste those chances. But Georgia gets there like, oh, you know what? We'll just let you beat us on the last play. You know, like people don't do that. Not in the SEC, except for Georgia. Kentucky wouldn't do that. Tennessee wouldn't do that. But Georgia did it. They always do it.
Well, let's understand, people, that this is coming from a Florida fan. I don't know how much room you have to boast and brag, George.
Gators aren't happy unless somebody hates us. You know, when Georgia tries to challenge us for having the most criminal team, I object. I go, Florida is the street gang in football uniforms. I'm proud of that. And, yes, we've had some murderers, but shit happens. You know, I can't make excuses for everything. Georgia doesn't compare to us with their criminal shit.
Georgia.
So don't even try to snoop it.
George, we had a big Georgia-Florida discussion. Had a great discussion that we posted a video on about a week ago. We had Florida guy, David Waters, Gators Breakdown. Yep. We had Palmer Toms on.
Yeah.
I hope you're able to catch that. But, yeah, we tried to talk it all the way through, you know, for like 20, 25 minutes. Georgia, Florida. Good stuff.
Listen, it's a push, you know, who's the best. But I'd rather be a Gator. I've been to Athens. You know, I helped a girl move down there when I was like 14 years old in 1974. My dad said to two of his sons, he said, help her move. You know, she was a friend of the guy that he worked for. She needed some labor. So me and my 16-year-old brother loaded her stuff up and moved her to Athens so she could go to college.
George, I've got an automatic reflex that when you start telling stories, you know what I do?
What?
I look at the count of people watching, and as soon as that starts to go down, that's when I know to pull the plug.
Hey, here's one where it'll go up. When I was 11, I got to shake Bear Bryant's hand. Alabama was playing Auburn, and my dad owned the Heart of Auburn restaurant, and they had their team meal there before the game. That was badass. I had no idea what I was doing, like who that guy was.
That's very cool. You've got a Bear Bryant story.
Yeah,
we've gone from 45 to 40
my dad
now.
said, my dad said, shake that man's hand, George. He said, that's Bear Bryant, the greatest college football coach of all time, and I shook the guy's hand. I was 11. I wasn't totally innocent, but I had no idea who he was.
Hat,
you know?
did you? You didn't steal that hat, did you?
No, we had it made, man. We were right across from Funchess Hall in Auburn, and we owned the Heart of Auburn Motel and Restaurant. And now I Google Earth it. It's a Rite Aid drugstore. Isn't that sad? Oh, my God.
All right, George. What I told you a few minutes ago is holding true. We've lost 6 since the story started. Now you dug in there with Bear Bryant. That was a nice college football related story. I can admire that. Getting to meet Bear Bryant, that's good stuff.
I watched your video today about the teams that are down and how you rate that, and you got to Auburn and you told the story. And I was thinking Pat Sullivan won the Heisman Trophy for Auburn in 1971. You didn't go back that far.
I didn't go back that far because I didn't need to go back that far. But
it was Sullivan to Beasley, all 7-11.
All right, George.
All right, love you, man.
Have a good one, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Good night.
Our man George. George has commented to this channel more than anyone. No count needs to be made. We don't need to count through the comments. And this is one gripe I've got with Google, with YouTube. It's the same deal. Is that they used to tell me how many comments came in. I could look it up. Basically, if you own a YouTube channel, for any of you that do know this, that you can go on your YouTube analytics and you can find just about any reasonable measurement that you would like about the views and the subscribers added and the duration time, which I got to thank all of you out there because you watch these videos for a long time. So one of the most difficult things to do is to keep and hold an audience on YouTube, because if you're like me, you're just constantly seeing stuff on the traffic, on the suggested videos that you're like, oh, even though this is good what I'm watching, I've watched it for 30 seconds, I'm going to jump to this, jump to that, jump to this. For us to hold an audience for more than 10 minutes, on average, the average person, for all our videos, not just the live streams, but even taking into consideration the short videos, we are holding our viewers for more than 10 minutes per video. That's a phenomenal rate. So I got to thank you for actually listening to me for more than 10 minutes on average. And that counts all the people that watch for 5 seconds, then they're done and they're out. So thank you so much for that. Somebody has contributed to the super chat. I will be posting your comment to the screen as soon as I get to it. And as usual, I am way behind on posting the comments to the screen and getting through. I'm only at 12:06, and yikes, I'm 32 minutes behind. So KB, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. I will get it on there. And that's obviously Kevin. Thanks for letting me call in. Quick question. If the college football season is postponed until later in the season or games canceled, will we see a surge of players declare for the NFL Supplemental Draft? Well, I would think so. That's just a gut reaction to that, but at the same time, they're not going to have that 1 year of performance on their track record. So we're talking about limited number of players that are going to be able to have the draft grade that I would think minus a 2020 season. They already chose not to. Come out in after 2019, take a Najee Harris, who almost opted for the NFL draft, but he decided to go back and play his next season at Alabama. So those players have already determined, okay, I need to stay in school and play another 2020 season because the draft grade wasn't what I wanted it to be. Well, they're not going to have that performance to be added onto, I guess. When you throw questions at me like that, I'll make this comment from time to time. I can't get into the hearts and minds of young men or anybody, so I don't know. It's like when people ask me, is Urban Meyer going to coach again? I don't know. I can give you my thoughts. I can tell you where the best landing spot is. I think that's probably shifted from USC to possibly Texas if Tom Herman doesn't get his act together. Urban Meyer at Texas, and I'm going off on something else. Urban Meyer to Texas was brought up the other night, and I think that makes sense. But Urban Meyer may never coach again. But in terms of the season and players opting for the NFL Supplemental Draft, we used to hear a lot more about the NFL Supplemental Draft. There used to be a lot more big-name players from the collegiate ranks would pop out like a Bernie Kosar years ago and opt to go in the NFL Supplemental Draft early. We haven't seen that. But KB, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Also, keep in mind, people, if you want to support us directly, you can go to Venmo or PayPal and just search Mark Rogers TV and support the channel right there. Having an issue with my laptop recently where this is my laptop right here this is my main baby right here. It's a MacBook Pro, and it's probably going on a good 7 years. And as you can imagine, it gets a ton of use, and it's still performing well. But I've run into an issue where if I'm on the same page for an extended period of time, it just locks down, and I got to restart the computer. And I'm restarting this computer like 10 and 12 times a day. So I'm thinking, got to buy the new MacBook Pro, and those are pricey. And then I got this baby. This is really ancient. This has to be, this is to the degree of look at my power cord here. We got all sorts of tape going there for the power cord on the MacBook Air. That's like a 2010. This baby's like 10 years old, but it's still, as a side computer to just look up stats and information. It does the job. It's a little slow, but it's got some wear and tear on it. All right, let's get to college football. Mike's on the chat from Florida State. So, Mike, everybody else that loves Florida State football, you'll be interested to know that for the first time this past Florida State show, so on Tuesday night, we do our big Florida State show, Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We simulcasted that to Facebook and got over 2,000 views. First time out of the gate. Now, the video was shared all over the place, so that was the reason, because I've only got like 800 likes on Facebook. So again, there's another way you can help me out that won't cost you a dime. You go on over to Facebook, look up Mark Rogers TV on Facebook, and just hit the like button. That would be fabulous. I am doing great, Ian. Thank you so much for asking, sir. Lucas, good to see you. Good to see everyone on the chat. Some guy is electric. Oh, we're talking pandemic. Jamie Newman overrated. Luke Walker. Jamie Newman, I was just looking at his numbers at Wake. Now, I probably saw him play 7 or 8 times during his couple of years of starting at Wake Forest. John Wofford was the quarterback prior to Jamie Newman and kept beating him out, even though Jamie Newman was the guy that was supposed to have the stronger arm, was more of a dynamic playmaker with his legs, but John Wofford continued to beat him out, and John Wofford turned into a really good quarterback his final season at Wake when he finally got some weapons and an offensive line that could protect him. He jumped up to like 35 touchdown passes his final season with only like 5 or 6 picks. Jamie Newman did not play well, and again, I understand at Wake Forest, he's not going to have the best weapons around him, but he's playing marginal defenses. I'm being kind in the ACC, mostly marginal defenses. His performances against the likes of Syracuse, Clemson, I get it. They got trucked against Clemson. And did I watch Wake Forest play Clemson? No, so I cannot evaluate Jamie Newman's performance past his awful stat line, because I'm not watching 52-3 football games on Saturday afternoon. So I probably saw like 5 plays during commercial breaks from other games. But Jamie Newman had bad games against Syracuse. I'm going to break it all down here in the next few days. When we look at our top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC, top 5 running backs in the SEC, and our coaches' rankings are coming as well. When it's not just my rankings, but we've got Brent Beard from College Sports Today coming on, and we will compare our list of quarterbacks, running backs, and coaches' rankings. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
I'm looking forward for the next, the upcoming season for football. If it does, what can possibly go wrong? But I was just gonna, what my perspective or prediction if Harbaugh gets fired. I know I'm a Michigan fan, and this is my prediction. If there's a new hiring for head coach, if Harbaugh can get it done, though. If you want to hear it, if you want.
So you're giving me your predictions, or you want my prediction?
Well, I just have a good suggestion for a Michigan head coach.
All right, let's hear it.
That's John Harbaugh, the next Harbaugh.
Oh, to bring in John Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean he had the Super Bowl win with Ravens and against his own brother in what Super Bowl was that?
2012. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, he can draft well. I don't know about recruiting, but I think John Harbaugh should be the next guy. Jim Harbaugh can. I don't want Jim Harbaugh to leave. I'm just suggesting new coaches. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, let's look at this situation, but we'll do it briefly, Nate, because I don't know that it's worth the time. So this is what we're going to. This is what we're going to consider. First of all, you want Jim Harbaugh out, right?
No.
Okay, you're just saying if he gets fired.
Yeah. For example.
Okay. What successful NFL head coach, and John Harbaugh would check that box, what successful NFL head coach has ever gone back to college?
I mean, he assisted coaching NC football team.
When has a successful NFL head coach ever come back to college? I can actually think of one,
I get
and it was about 35 years ago.
Never.
Yeah. So John Harbaugh's got no reason to come back to college and mess around with 20-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids, and mess around with trying to keep them eligible and the NCAA and infractions and violations and all the things, recruiting. That's a grind. He doesn't want to deal with that. Believe me. He's got a good thing going in Baltimore. He's got a great quarterback, great young quarterback. He's got a tremendous organization. They draft like nobody's business. It's a tremendous organization. He loves what he's doing right now. Plus, do you think he's really going to take over the same job his brother was? He's not going to do that to his brother. Just not going to happen.
That's just my prediction, though. It's my opinion. That's my suggestion. I mean, nothing's wrong by it. That's my opinion. I mean, sorry if I did it wrong.
No, you didn't do anything wrong. You can have whatever opinion you want. I'm just telling you why it's never going to happen.
I get what you mean. Like, never, like, the NFL coaches have, like, for example, Chip Kelly at UCLA, it hasn't done very good. And Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he recruited well and maybe coached well a little bit, but that's all he done well. And that's all I know from NFL coaches. Like you said, they haven't done anything to do into football coaching.
All right, Nate, is there anything else we need to discuss?
One more thing. Just for prediction, if that's okay.
Yeah, give me more predictions. Give me some more crazy predictions, Nate. We got John Harbaugh coaching in Michigan. What else you got for me?
Well, it's a team prediction thing.
Okay.
So I would say, I wouldn't say all the Big Ten teams, but maybe 3 teams. Minnesota maybe go Nah, like 9. I don't know. It's pretty tough. Like I said in chat, you don't know what's going to happen. But I would say 11-2 again.
Okay, you're making your Minnesota football prediction 11-2. Is that what I got out of that?
Yep. I mean, that's not a prediction. So anything can happen. So, number 2.
Well, it's not like you're predicting them to go 2-11, because of course that can't happen. So we appreciate the call, Nate. We appreciate the call.
Okay. Yeah, I have to go. Okay.
Thanks, Nate. Have a good one.
You too.
It's our guy Nate calling in. The prediction on the next Michigan coach and Minnesota's record. He just chose Minnesota out of nowhere. I'm going to tell you what Minnesota's going to do this year. And Nate went out on a line with 11-2. And Minnesota, of course, last season went 11-2. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod Farva. How you doing?
Hey, Rod Farva. What's going on, man?
Hey, not too much. Just thought I'd call in to see how things are going, and then I actually have a little more realistic candidate, because I know you and I had our little back and forth on Jim Harbaugh a couple weeks ago, but I actually have someone in case someone. Bronco Mendenhall. What do you think?
Well, I think he's doing a great job at Virginia. I think that for sure.
Right, but I think he might be the next guy. Because I think maybe with the great job that he's done at Virginia, they finally beat Virginia Tech after 15 years. I think he may be the next, up and coming. I mean, he's already a name in a way, but in terms of the big jobs that may be available next season. Because I think Tom Herman's going to be on the hot seat. Clay Helton's always on the hot seat. So I was just kind of seeing where your thoughts were on where he stands as a top coaching candidate for next season.
I think that's a great name. I have not heard that name ever mentioned in connection with the Michigan possible next candidate, and I think Bronco Mendenhall's a tremendous coach. I think by all measurements, what he's done at Virginia, he basically showed up and surmised that they had 10 to 15 ACC-worthy players on the roster. It was a disaster. And he said, you know what? We're going to suck it up. We're only going to win 2 games the first year. They go 2-10. He's like, I got to overhaul the whole thing. And he has. And it's a difficult university in regards to their academic standing and their requirements. He's got a pretty decent, rich football state, mid-Atlantic region. I think he's got a great thing going, and I've got a ton of respect for Bronco Mendenhall. I think he's done a tremendous job, and the guy knows defense, and he came all the way across the country, and there was speculation that he would not be able to – he had no ties to the East Coast. He had no recruiting ties. He had few relationships to build on, and there was a lot of question as to whether that was a good fit, and he's doing a great job. I love Bronco Mendenhall.
Right. Yeah, and I think he'd be a great fit in terms of just what you said, because Virginia or Michigan, just like Virginia, has the academic standing, and it's almost the same culture there, where it's not the students, the people, the alumni there aren't really fully invested in that football culture. So I think he would be that right fit. He would kind of bring that toughness in. He can maybe put that footprint in that, hey, we're going to be, more aggressive as a program. We're going to kind of take that right step into becoming a more proud program again, and then maybe practically put a footprint back into, hopefully not as an Ohio State fan, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
They could probably bring that right type of physical, tough-minded player into Ann Arbor. So I think he would be a really, really good fit there, because I think that program needs somebody kind of like an outsider. They had the right idea when, going outside the program with Rich Rodriguez. Rich Rodriguez was just a terrible fit in terms of culture. But I think Bronco Mendenhall would bring that right type of toughness, that right type of mindset. He's a class act. I think he would fit in perfectly at Michigan. And I think he'll be the next guy in terms of big name, because I think Clay Helton, depending on how USC is, obviously, because he's always going to be on the hot seat. And then I think Tom Herman's going to be a big guy on the hot seat. So, yeah, man, I really I'm a big Bronco Mendenhall fan. I'm also a Matt Campbell fan. So just kind of also just wanted to get your thoughts too. Do you think Texas is going to be an open job next season?
I would think that, and again, I'm not the Texas administration. I don't know what their bar is. I don't know how they're evaluating it, but this is the way I would approach it. So Tom Herman went there, and I think immediately they were better the first season. The record wasn't substantially better, but they went 7-6. They won a bowl game finally. Then they have the big breakout year in the Sugar Bowl, beat Georgia, go 10 wins, almost win the Big 12. Then people were expecting that to continue. It didn't. They take the step back last year. They were a mid-tier, 5-4 in the conference, 8-5. Did embarrass Utah, played a really good Alamo Bowl. So now they got Sam Ehlinger for his final season. For me, Texas, man, they've got to seriously contend for the Big 12 championship. So if I'm running the show, I'm looking at, and other factors come into play if they suffer a rash of 18 injuries or they lose every game by, on the final play of the game and they go 9-3 or something. But man, I've got to see a 9-3 regular season and a push toward the Big 12 championship. I've got to see us compete and be on the same level as Oklahoma. Maybe we don't beat them this year. Maybe we don't win the conference, but we've got to be able to play with them, which they did to a certain extent. But Oklahoma kept them in the game last year. And then if it doesn't get done for Texas, meaning win the Big 12 this year, they got to win the Big 12 in 2021. That's my criteria if I'm running the show at Texas, because then you're looking at year 5. In year 5, you're looking at Harbaugh territory in terms of we're paying you to win championships, and you've got every resource known to man to get it done, and you're not. So year 4, if it becomes a disaster, let's say they go 6-6, then if I'm running the show, Herman's out the door. But if they're a respectable 9-3, they're seriously challenging for the Big 12, then I give him one more year to knock down the door and take back the conference.
That was my thought as well. I would just give him one more year because, with Oklahoma bringing in yet another quarterback, Spencer Rattler, a lot of people believe he's going to be very good. Oklahoma, they always seem to have a fair amount of turnover, but then they just seem to find and develop, these kind of lesser known players. So I kind of think, I always kind of tend to lean Oklahoma in that game. It's such a great rivalry. That's probably been the best rivalry game in terms of exciting games to watch here amongst all the other elite rivalries lately. Because Ohio State Michigan's been so one-sided. So that's been such a fun game to watch. But yeah, I won't stay on too long. I'm glad my phone service was much clearer this time. But appreciate the show. Appreciate letting me call and keep the good work.
And one of these days we'll finish our Jim Harbaugh conversation.
Oh man, we'll need a whole episode just for that.
Okay. The Rod Favre on the line with us right here. We appreciate you calling, man. Have a good night.
All right. Good night.
Okay, I'm going to try to take this call. I tried my apologies there because I was ending his call at the same time that one was coming in, and I had already hit the button instead of taking your call. So please call back 860-325-3687. Here we go. All right, I got to get moving on this live chat. My goodness, I'm at 12:36 on the live chat. I'm 24 minutes behind. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello?
I bet.
Hello? Yes. Who's on the line? Okay. If that was a legitimate caller, please call back. All right. So We're talking Ohio State football live tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So if you love Ohio State football, I don't think it gets any better than Steve Hellwagon, Tony Gerdeman, Kevin Noon, and myself talking Ohio State football. We do it every week for 1 straight hour with you on the live stream. And we will do it tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time and all college football fan bases. So we do designate certain shows, Ohio State, Miami, Florida State. I would like to do others. But the entire fan base of college football, you are all welcome to jump in here and talk trash. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
I thought we put a quota on 1 call per show. I'm just kidding, George. What's up?
No, I know, but I thought of a really important question. Now, I have an honest question. You've been watching college football. Where were you in 1971 when I was 11 shaking Bear Bryant's hand? How old were you in 1971?
3.
3. Okay, so if you ever want to ask somebody that knows a serious question about football, call me. I'm here for you.
Oh,
because when you were 3, I was 11 shaking Bear Bryant's hand. So I got you.
So if anybody on here asks me questions that are too difficult for me, then we move them up to you. That's how we.
No, what I was really doing is putting you on the spot. I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
What do you, do you think somebody like Miami or Texas A&M or Texas or Oklahoma State or Oregon or just name any team on that level, do you think any of them have a 0% chance of winning the national title this year against Oklahoma or Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or Florida or LSU? Let's throw Clemson in there. You see what I'm saying, right? There's like first tier, second tier, like, but is there anyone, Texas A&M, Georgia, any of them, can they sneak in there and win the whole damn thing?
Nope.
That's why I love LSU and Auburn. They don't fuck around. Let them get to the title game and see what happens. But Georgia and these other teams go down there and they go do-de-do. Florida doesn't even do that. If we get there, we win. You know, unless we're playing Nebraska that ran 620 yards on us or whatever that was. Wasn't that funny? You remember that game? Who was it that ran over us and beat us like 48-0? I'm pretty sure Urban Meyer was the coach, by the way.
All right, George. So you went from me having to take the toughest questions that are brought to me by the viewers to you, and now you just said about 18 things that were incorrect that I'll need to spend like the next 20 minutes running down.
We can call it Mark Rogers After Dark. Oh, come on. Just ask me one question. Anything you ever wanted to know, but you weren't there, and I was. I'll tell you.
Okay, we'll get to that at some point. We've got more calls coming in, and you've got 2 calls in for the night, George. Talk to you next time.
The first one I can tell you about is Auburn, Alabama. 1971, Alabama beat Auburn.
Man, I hate to hang up on you, George. Man, when I say goodbye, then you just give me a nice little greeting and say goodbye. Hey, it's Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? There we go.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
McD, what's going on?
Hey, I've been listening to the show home, man. I haven't really been in the chat because I'm busy doing other stuff. But I've been listening to it for the past hour or so. And basically, the reason I'm calling is because I'm here to tell you that the Pac-12 is screwed. As far as I'm concerned, they are going to get fleeced, a talent from all their schools. USC will never be the same. Oregon, what they're doing up there is going to take a major step back.
And I think when you see conference realignment, I don't think there's going to be a Pac-12 anymore because of what the state of California decided to do, and because of the TV contract that the Pac-12 has brought themselves in. So I want to call up and talk about how the Pac-12, I think, is going to be basically not a thing anymore in 5 years.
Okay. You want my thoughts?
Yeah, what's your 2 cents, sir?
Okay. Hopefully I've got a little bit more than 2 cents. Here it is. That if everything you just said comes to fruition, what we are seeing possibly transpire would be that the Pac-12 would miss the college football season, or their league would be greatly compromised, meaning they would only maybe play 6 teams or 8 teams, or certain teams would have to, as was mentioned with an earlier caller, would have to go to other conferences. If that happens, what you're talking about will take place. That serious, big-time collegiate football players, high school football players, obviously moving on to the next level, will say, that league's a joke. They don't take football seriously. The SEC didn't let that happen. The Big Ten didn't let that happen because they play big boy football. Even the Big 12 and the ACC, etc., did not let that happen. Yes, I'm not going to a Pac-12 school because they don't play big-time football. They don't take it seriously. Whether right or wrong, I want to take the political aspect of this out. So I'm not saying that they're not making safe, health-conscious decisions. That's for another day to discuss that. I'm not talking about that right now. But I agree with you that if that, in fact, does happen, yes, that will be the ramification. But I will say, McD, let's see if that actually happens. This is what's being talked about now. But for that to actually happen, I've got to see it play out. I cannot imagine that the Pac-12 is not going to play football this year.
I do think they'll play football, but it will be at a much. I think it's probably, if anything, it'll be in conference, and I just feel like that. I just think that the Pac-12 will be out recruited to the point that it might not even be considered a Power 5 conference anymore. And I think what you're going to see in the next conference realignment is, I think you're going to see teams like USC, Oregon, and probably the Arizona schools just lead the conference. I think you're going to maybe see, as I said, four big conferences of 16 teams. You have the ACC possibly go ahead and maybe take Maryland and Rutgers. You go ahead and have the Big Ten take probably Iowa State and one of the Kansas schools, because the Big 12 will want to make room for some of the bigger Pac-12 teams. And I think certain schools in the Pac-12, such as Oregon State and Washington State, those two specifically, I think could possibly even see themselves being put in a group of 5 level in the next conference realignment because of this. I think with and this is just my opinion, I think what the state of California did was wrong. I think they jumped the gun too quickly, and I think that basically the whole college football landscape will change within the next 5 years during conference realignment.
Okay. I already gave you my thoughts, McD. Basically, that if it plays out the way you're talking about, I totally agree with you. But I am saying, whoa, hang on just a second. That it's not necessarily going to play out like that.
And I hope I'm wrong, Mark. I really do. I really hope I'm wrong, but I mean, I couldn't believe the announcement that California made in May, making a decision, making basically a decision that's going to be in September, October, November, and early December. I personally think the season is going to be pushed 30 days back anyway, but basically, we'll see what happens. But I think if the Pac-12 seriously might be in severe trouble, especially that TV contract, which is terrible. I mean, if this was the SEC, I wouldn't be as concerned. But with that TV contract, I think the Pac-12 might be looking at not surviving. But We'll see what happens. I'm always optimistic. I hope for the best for the Pac-12. I want them to actually stay around, but I think it might be a bit tough. But thanks for taking my call, Mark, and go Terps. We will be playing football in the fall and making a bowl game.
Okay. Playing football there at Maryland. Yes. McD Sports 4, one of my favorite callers. Great to hear from him. All right. And I agree that if, in fact, it plays out the way the Pac-12 has indicated based on, first of all, California's mandate of staying inside and quarantining and being shut down for the next 3 months, and if that affects the schools the way we believe it will and their athletic programs, then, yeah, I can see us headed down that road. But let's see what happens this football season concerning the Pac-12 before we write off the conference for eternity. All right. I will once again remind everyone that we've got content produced each and every day. Most recently, I looked at the Ohio State-Clemson great debate. I have looked at Ohio State and Michigan from a number of angles, and we've got another one coming out soon, the 15-year bloodbath, where I compare the two programs from a number of angles. Of course, we've got our Ohio State Alive show coming up Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And whether you like Ohio State or not, as you can see in the live stream of any of our Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, Notre Dame shows, you jump on in and you talk trash with everybody else and you catch up on college football right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, 860-325-3687. I will let everyone know, since this is a big topic in regards to what's going to happen with the college football season, that Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football took part in the Pac-12 coaches meetings this week. So the Pac-12 coaches got together this week, and then they also had a series of news conferences, kind of like a pre-Pac-12 media days. Tony Siracusa of Last Word on College Football covered that. I am going to be discussing what he heard, what questions he asked, and what he gathered from those coaches' interviews this week. We'll get that out to you as soon as possible. SEC coaches rankings. Let's not try to make it suspenseful. Nick Saban. Okay, who else? Those should be some interesting rankings, and I'm sure there will be much debate and disagreement over that. Let me make sure that I take care of this. Hang on just a second. All right. Let me catch up to where you guys are in the live chat. All right. So what we know right now is that it was released on ESPN and some other sites today that the SEC officials are taking a vote on May 22nd. So that's next Friday on May 22nd, taking a vote to determine whether they are opening campuses for athletic activities on June 1st. So stay tuned for that. That's a big decision. As I mentioned off the top of the show, Justin Wilcox, the head coach at Cal, has stated that, hey, if the Pac-12 gets shut down, or because we're a California university, we're locked in here. I'm looking at options right now. Myself, my coaching staff, we are looking at options to take our football team outside the state to prepare for the football season. All right. Again, it should be interesting to hear what Tony Siracusa gathered in speaking with Pac-12 coaches this week. And we also know that Pac-12 officials met with Power 5 commissioners actually met with Roger Goodell to get some thoughts on what the NFL is determining to get set for the season. We saw just a few weeks ago, the NFL said, we're ready to roll out the schedule and play football. Here's our schedule. We're playing just like nothing is in the works other than just football as is. And the NFL is marching on with its schedule. So the Power 5 commissioners obviously are serious about getting football to be played. They have met with Roger Goodell to say, what are you boys doing to get ready for the season? Because we will follow suit. Because the NFL, we can make a discussion on here about the quality of football or what brand of football you enjoy the best. But when it comes to running a sports league, the NFL is king. All right, everyone. I'm going to shut it down for the night. I have a lot of work to do for you, the college football fan. A lot of videos to knock out. We're going to be reviewing the 1983 National Championship season and what happened, what should have happened, what should have been decided, what it would have looked like in the college football playoff era and the BCS era. Stay tuned for that. And again, SEC top 5 coaches, top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, and coaches rankings, along with Pac-12 that we've already released. Quarterback Aaron McLaughlin, a decommit from Auburn, is the first 300 player to sign or commit. Of course, signing period coming up in December to commit to North Carolina State. Why he would do that, I don't know. Obviously, has built some strong relationships with the North Carolina State coaching staff and one Dave Doran. Appreciate you guys stopping by. If you've got a comment or question that you wanted to see me answer, please copy and paste it and do so in the comment section of any of the videos. If you shop Amazon, please use the link in the description section of any of the videos to help us build the channel. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. #1 MSU fan. I hope you liked that I displayed each and every helmet. Gave you a look. No, we don't have a Michigan State helmet. We'll do something about that at some point in the future. Maybe if you win 10 games again in the next 10 years. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. See you next time.